The glittering facade of the world's most famous monarchy has always possessed an unparalleled capacity to captivate the global imagination, serving as a modern tapestry where fairy tales and reality intertwine. For generations, the public has consumed the grand narratives of royalty with an insatiable appetite, viewing the majestic palaces, the ceremonial pageantry, and the seemingly flawless lives of those born or married into sovereign privilege as the ultimate expression of human romance and distinction. Every royal wedding becomes an international spectacle, every public appearance a masterclass in choreographed perfection, and every official portrait a carefully curated testament to institutional stability and personal bliss. Yet, behind the towering wrought-iron gates and the pristine stone walls lies a complex, highly regulated universe where individual identity is systematically subordinated to the preservation of the crown. It is a world governed by ancient protocols, unyielding traditions, and an intense, relentless level of public and media scrutiny that transforms private existence into a perpetual theatrical performance. The true nature of this high-stakes environment remains largely hidden from the casual observer, buried beneath layers of tradition, until a crack appears in the flawless veneer, reminding us that those who inhabit these golden cages are, above all, human beings navigating profound emotional landscapes. To understand the immense gravity of the modern royal phenomenon, one must recognize that the institution operates not just as a family, but as a massive corporate entity, often referred to internally and externally as a complex machinery of public relations and statecraft. Within this intricate network, the personal lives of individual royals are inextricably linked to the collective reputation of the institution, creating an environment where personal desires frequently collide with institutional obligations. This tension between the human heart and the requirements of the state has historically generated some of the most compelling and dramatic chapters in contemporary history, serving as a rich source of inspiration for writers, filmmakers, and dramatists worldwide. The media, acting as both an amplifier and an aggressive commentator, plays a pivotal role in shaping these narratives, turning private moments into public property and elevating personal struggles into global debates. It is within this highly charged atmosphere that the boundaries between documented reality and dramatic interpretation begin to blur, giving rise to a unique genre of storytelling that seeks to explore the human emotions behind the historic headlines. As we prepare to delve deeper into one of the most polarizing and fascinating modern chapters of this ongoing saga, it becomes essential to reflect on how these public narratives impact our collective understanding of fame, duty, and personal sacrifice. The continuous evolution of these stories ensures that there is always a new layer to uncover, a fresh perspective to analyze, and an untold emotional depth to explore. To ensure you never miss an episode of this deep dive into the world of high-stakes drama and media representation, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications, as your continued support allows us to bring you these comprehensive and meticulously detailed accounts. The intersection of real-world historical events and the cinematic arts has long provided a lens through which society processes major cultural shifts. And few subjects have proven more fertile for this kind of dramatic exploration than the contemporary evolution of the House of Windsor. When a prominent cable network first announced its intention to dramatize the deeply personal and highly publicized journey of a modern prince and his American bride, the media landscape responded with a mixture of intense anticipation and sharp skepticism. This cinematic project was not an isolated creative endeavor, but rather the continuation of an ambitious, dramatic trilogy designed to chronicle the unfolding chapters of a relationship that had effectively captivated millions across the globe. The initial installments of this cinematic series had focused heavily on the intoxicating romance of the early days, capturing the whirlwind courtship, the cultural significance of their union, and the grand, televised celebration that seemed to promise a flawless continuation of the traditional royal narrative. Those early films operated largely within the framework of the classic romantic ideal, emphasizing the triumph of love over conventional boundaries and presenting a vision of a modernized institution ready to embrace change. However, as time progressed and the complex realities of their situation began to manifest in the global press, the tone of the real-world narrative underwent a dramatic and undeniable shift, moving away from the celebratory euphoria of the wedding day toward a much darker, more isolated reality. The third installment of this television movie franchise was conceived specifically to address this turbulent transition, aiming to pull back the curtain on the intense domestic and institutional pressures that eventually led to an unprecedented fracture within the modern household. This upcoming cinematic feature, titled with an overt nod to the high-stakes nature of their departure, promised to offer viewers an intimate, dramatized look at the final months leading up to their historic decision to step away from their official capacities. The announcement of the film instantly reignited a global conversation about the boundaries of biographical dramatization, the ethics of portraying living figures in moments of intense personal vulnerability, and the enduring power of television to shape public perception of real-world events. The promotional campaign for this dramatic feature began to offer the public its very first glimpse into how these deeply sensitive and highly debated events would be translated for the screen, generating immediate analysis from media commentators and dedicated followers alike. The teaser trailers and promotional materials were carefully crafted to evoke a profound sense of atmosphere, leaning heavily into themes of isolation, hidden conflict, and the psychological weight of an unyielding public spotlight. Visual contrasts played a major role in establishing this mood, juxtaposing the cold, formal grandeur of palatial interiors with the raw, intimate tension of private conversations between two people trying to navigate an increasingly hostile environment. The marketing materials made it abundantly clear that this film would not be a light-hearted romance, but rather a tense, psychological drama focusing on the emotional toll of institutional life, the breakdown of communication within an ancient structure, and the ultimate realization that some fairy tales demand a cost too high to bear. The cinematic narrative shifts its focus entirely onto the profound internal crisis that began to consume the daily existence of the celebrated couple, laying bare the stark contrast between public appearances and the raw emotional reality occurring behind closed doors. At the core of this dramatic depiction is an exploration of an agonizing sense of isolation that gradually enveloped the young Duchess as she attempted to navigate the rigid, unyielding structures of an ancient and traditional institution. The film meticulously recreates the psychological weight of this environment, illustrating how the initial optimism of a new beginning slowly dissolved into a suffocating routine of public scrutiny and internal silence. Viewers are shown a dramatized portrayal of a woman increasingly cut off from her familiar support systems, navigating a complex web of protocol where every gesture, every wardrobe choice, and every word spoken in public was subjected to microscopic analysis and intense, often hostile commentary by the global press. This deep sense of personal isolation was further compounded by a growing disillusionment with the institutional apparatus, colloquially known as the firm, which the couple increasingly perceived as cold, unsympathetic, and entirely unwilling to intervene or offer protection against the relentless tide of media attacks that seemed to grow more vicious with each passing day. As the dramatic tension escalates, the movie delves into the complex dynamics of institutional public relations. portraying the couple's profound disappointment and frustration over what they saw as a deliberate failure to defend their character against demonstrably false and damaging narratives. In the film's tense dialogues, the palace emerges not as a protective sanctuary, but as a rigid bureaucracy deeply invested in its own survival and structural preservation, often at the direct expense of the individual well-being of its younger members. This perceived lack of support creates an atmosphere of profound betrayal, driving a wedge between the couple and the broader family structure. The narrative emphasizes that this was not merely a disagreement over media strategy, but a fundamental clash of values regarding human empathy and institutional duty. The screenplay highlights the agonizing realization that the very machinery designed to manage the image of the monarchy was actively participating in their marginalization, leaving them to face a hostile media landscape entirely exposed, and without an official voice to counter the daily onslaught of negative coverage. The emotional anchor of this segment rests heavily on the shoulders of the prince, whose character is driven by a deep, visceral terror that history was on the verge of repeating itself in the most tragic way possible. The film portrays his internal world as one haunted by the vivid, painful memories of his youth, specifically the relentless hounding and untimely death of his mother. This inherited trauma becomes the primary catalyst for his actions, transforming his role from a traditional prince fulfilling institutional expectations into a fiercely protective husband and father determined to break a multi-generational cycle of suffering. The dramatic reenactments capture his escalating panic as he witnesses his wife experiencing a similar level of psychological distress. Recognizing the terrifying parallels between the past and the present, his driving motivation becomes an absolute refusal to allow his family to be destroyed by the same societal and media forces that had claimed his mother's life, creating a powerful sense of urgency that propels the story toward its ultimate radical climax. This profound fear for the safety and sanity of his wife and young son overrides all considerations of royal duty, lineage, and institutional loyalty, setting the stage for an unprecedented confrontation with the established order to bring this highly charged emotional landscape to life. The production relied on the performances of Jordan Dean, who stepped into the role of the tormented prince, and Sidney Morton, who undertook the complex task of portraying the isolated duchess. The film attempts to capture the subtle nuances of their public and private personas, navigating the difficult creative territory of embodying living, globally recognized figures who are continuously present in the modern news cycle. The actors are tasked with conveying a wide spectrum of emotion, from the initial dignified endurance of public pressure to the eventual tearful breakdowns that occurred when the cameras were finally turned off. The cinematic interpretation focuses heavily on the quiet, whispered conversations between the couple in the dead of night, imagining the intense discussions, the shared tears, and the mutual support that sustained them through their most turbulent hours. These scenes are designed to humanize the headlines, offering the audience a window into the raw vulnerability of two individuals trying to maintain their sanity and protect their marriage while the entire world debated their future and scrutinized their every move. A significant portion of the film's dramatic weight is dedicated to recreating the historic and highly controversial television interview with Oprah Winfrey, an event that sent shockwaves through the global media landscape and permanently altered the public perception of the modern monarchy. The movie recreates the visual layout and tense atmosphere of that televised encounter, treating it as a pivotal turning point where the hidden pain of the preceding years was finally laid bare for the world to see. The dramatic script echoes the emotional revelations of that interview, focusing on the disclosures regarding mental health struggles, internal institutional coldness, and the profound sense of abandonment that ultimately made their continued participation in royal life entirely unsustainable. This sequence serves as the narrative climax of their public truth-telling, a moment where the silence was permanently broken and the full extent of their domestic crisis was revealed to an audience of millions, cementing their status as cultural icons who chose personal survival over institutional conformity. Intertwined with these heavy emotional themes are the domestic realities of their family life. Specifically the presence of their young son, Archie, who represents both the vulnerability of their situation and the ultimate motivation for their dramatic departure. The inclusion of a young actor portraying the child in the film's promotional trailers and key scenes serves as a powerful visual reminder of the stakes involved in their decision, shifting the focus from an abstract institutional dispute to a concrete struggle for the future and safety of a child. The narrative portrays the parents' desperate desire to provide a normal, peaceful upbringing for their son, away from the toxic environment of the paparazzi and the rigid, suffocating expectations of palatial life. This familial dimension adds a layer of universal empathy to the story, framing their eventual relocation not as a petulant rebellion against tradition, but as a necessary, protective act of parenthood designed to shield an innocent child from the historical burdens and modern perils of a public dynasty. The culmination of this dramatic chronicle focuses intensely on the profound global ripples caused by the couple's ultimate departure, exploring the far-reaching consequences of their choice on both the ancient institution they left behind and the modern media landscape that continues to follow their every move. By choosing personal well-being and independence over the traditional obligations of the crown, the Prince and Duchess effectively rewrote the modern playbook for global celebrity, transforming themselves from senior members of a historic dynasty into highly influential, independent public figures operating on a global stage. This final segment of the narrative explores the broader significance of their unprecedented relocation, framing it not merely as a temporary family dispute, but as a historic cultural inflection point that forced a global audience to re-examine long-held assumptions regarding the price of fame, the nature of public duty, and the heavy psychological toll of institutional life. The story follows their transition to a new life across the Atlantic, illustrating the complex challenges of building a completely independent identity while remaining permanently tethered to the history and titles of their past. To fully understand the gravity of these events and why they resonate so deeply with millions of people around the world, the film and its surrounding discourse delve into the deeply intertwined histories and personal backgrounds of the individuals involved, providing vital context to their dramatic choices. Prince Harry, born into the direct line of succession as the younger son of the Prince of Wales and the late Diana, Princess of Wales, had spent his entire life under an uncompromising public lens, with his childhood tragedies and youthful rebellions meticulously documented by the international press. His identity was profoundly shaped by his military service, including 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan, which provided him with a sense of purpose and a connection to the world outside palatial walls that would ultimately influence his desire for a more autonomous existence. On the other hand, Meghan Markle brought a completely different set of life experiences to the royal family. Having achieved success as an American actress, a university graduate, and an outspoken advocate for gender equality and social justice long before she ever met her future husband. Her background as a self-made woman navigating the highly competitive entertainment industry gave her a distinct perspective on public life, making the rigid, silent constraints of traditional royal protocol an exceptionally difficult environment to adapt to, leading to the profound cultural and institutional clashes that defined their brief tenure as working royals. The narrative also extends its gaze to the broader circle of historical figures and related events that formed the backdrop of this contemporary drama, drawing explicit connections to past crises within the House of Windsor to show that this modern fracture was part of a larger historical pattern. The film subtly evokes the memory of King Edward VIII's historic abdication, a monumental event that shook the foundations of the monarchy and demonstrated the profound institutional disruption that can occur when personal love comes into direct conflict with the demands of the sovereign state. Furthermore, the script highlights the ongoing, complex relationships with other senior members of the royal family, including King Charles III and the Prince and Princess of Wales, illustrating how the personal bonds of brotherhood and fatherhood became severely strained under the immense pressure of institutional management and media manipulation. By framing the couple's departure within this wider historical and familial context, the story elevates itself from a simple celebrity gossip narrative into a complex exploration of a family dynasty struggling to reconcile its ancient, unyielding traditions with the rapidly evolving values of the modern 21st century. As the film draws to its emotional conclusion, it presents a bittersweet reflection on the reality of contemporary fairy tales, demonstrating that the pursuit of personal happiness and mental peace often requires the sacrifice of extraordinary privilege and historical status. The final scenes depict the couple establishing their new foundation, launching philanthropic endeavors, and navigating the complexities of commercial media partnerships, all while striving to maintain a secure and private sanctuary for their growing family. The cinematic project leaves the audience with a powerful sense of closure regarding their departure, yet it opens a broader conversation about what the future holds for both the independent couple and the enduring monarchy they chose to leave behind. It underscores the idea that while the traditional fairy tale ending of a royal wedding may have dissolved under the weight of real-world pressures, the choice to reclaim ownership of their own narrative and prioritize human emotion over institutional expectations represents a different, arguably more profound kind of triumph, cementing this chapter as one of the most compelling, debated, and truly historic sagas of our time.